I'm going to chime in on this Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou situation. The two have been trading words back and forth. I don't know whether the talk is about Tyson Fury fighting in the UFC or Ngannou fighting in boxing, but certainly I've seen a lot of the fans talk about the prospect of Ngannou fighting in a boxing ring. They talk about his punching power and what have you. Well, first of all, Ngannou in the UFC fights in 4-ounce gloves. And if a 265-pound man is hitting you upside the head with 4-ounce gloves, then it's going to have a lot more of an impact than if he was hitting you with 10-ounce gloves. Also, UFC fighters are not as accustomed to being hit in the head as boxers are. So you have to take these things into account. Now, I'm not saying Ngannou can't punch. I've seen him hit in the bag and all that kind of stuff. I've seen some of his knockouts. But in a boxing ring, it's 12 rounds. He's got punches coming back at him which are of much higher quality in a boxing ring than what he's used to in UFC. And even if his power does translate over to boxing, there is so many heavyweights who can punch. It's really not a rarity. I mean, there are guys at domestic level who can punch really hard. And some people say, well, they haven't proven their power against top-level opposition. The eye test can tell you a lot about power, particularly at heavyweight. And I'm saying that there are guys, and this goes for a lot of the lighter weights as well, but certainly even more so at heavyweight, a lot of the guys in the top 100, and I'm talking about guys who are not in the top 10, but maybe not even in the top 20, they can hit as hard as the guys in the top 10. At least most of the guys in the top 10. Oh yeah, there's certain guys in the top 100 who can crack like the guys in the top 10. They just don't have the all-round ability. They don't have the skill, might not have the chin, might not have the confidence, might not have the punch resistance, and so on. I mean, you look at somebody like Nick Webb. Nick Webb's a big man, and he can punch really hard. David Price is a big man, and he can punch really hard. So finding a big guy who can punch really hard is not particularly challenging. So I wouldn't be so impressed and so quick to believe that because Ngannou can punch really hard, he can make an impact in boxing. Now, obviously, he's got combat sport experience. That definitely stands him in good stead. But UFC and boxing are two very, very different disciplines. And personally, I would rather see a top boxer at the peak of his game crossing over to UFC rather than a UFC guy crossing over to boxing. Not like I hate the idea. If Ngannou crosses over to boxing and fights Fury or Joshua, will I watch it for curiosity's sake? Yes, I will. But what I've been waiting for the longest is for a boxer at his peak to cross over into UFC and see what he can do. Now, over the years, we've seen the likes of Ray Mercer go into UFC, James Toney. And actually, a lot of people don't realize that Jeremy Williams, who was a heavyweight fringe contender back in the 90s, he actually fought MMA at the back end of his combat sports career, but he had, I think, jiu-jitsu and wrestling experience from when he was very young. So he came from a martial arts background. So when he crossed over into MMA after his boxing career was done, he looked pretty good. He looked like he knew what he was doing. Tyson Fury, I'm sure he's had a wrestle about and whatever with certain MMA guys. I know he's friends with some MMA guys, but he hasn't competed. We know that. He certainly hasn't been doing it, as far as I'm aware, since he was a kid. So I wouldn't really give Tyson Fury much chance of going into MMA and having success at the highest level. But with the likes of Dylan White, and I'll make a separate video, he does actually have some MMA experience. He had one MMA fight and a lot of kickboxing experience. And as we know, there are plenty of people who have a kickboxing background in the UFC. So that's my take on the Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou situation. I'm certainly not dissing Ngannou. And by the way, even though I'm not an MMA guy, I massively respect MMA fighters and what they do. I prefer boxing as a form of entertainment, and I always prefer boxing, but the MMA guys, the UFC guys, tremendously tough, okay, to get in the ring and do what they do. Kudos to them, they're warriors, all right? But in this particular situation, I would be very surprised if Francis Ngannou could come to boxing and do anything at all. I'd be surprised if he could get to European level. I mean, maybe British level, but would you favor Francis Ngannou against a Daniel Dubois? Would you favor him against the Joe Joyce? Never mind talking about the top guys, the Tyson Furies, the Anthony Joshuas, you know? So, hey, at the end of the day, if people want to see it, I'm sure it will happen. Watch this space. I think it's good for both sports if their guy can go into the other sport and win. You know, so what I mean to say is it's good for either sport. So if a UFC guy goes into boxing and beats the champion, that's great for UFC. If a boxer goes into UFC and beats Ngannou, great for boxing. But it's obviously quite bad for the loser. So the stakes are high here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. And as I keep saying, I know some people are going to dispute it, but it's just a fact of life. There are loads of fighters, particularly heavyweights, who punch just as hard as the top guys, but they're not good enough in pretty much every other area to make it count and to become a world level fighter. If you're just looking for a heavyweight who can punch, people, there's gyms all over the world that have got heavyweights in them that will knock a wall down. It doesn't mean they're going to become heavyweight champion. It takes more than just power at heavyweight. And at every weight, but especially in the heavyweight division where people get so carried away with power. Big guys who can punch are a dime a dozen, trust me. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.